Alright, we're live.
Alright, cool. Alright, so... Oh, there are two people in the chat. Okay.
Alright.
Or they're waiting, but okay. We'll see.
Well,
They might be a little behind or something. Yeah. So, for, like, for the audience, and just to, like, refresh, what are your, like, political beliefs?
My political beliefs? Alright.
Yeah.
You all would know, if you've watched the videos on this channel, that I am a Trotskyist, or, well, I call myself a Trotskyist, and I hold syndicalist values as well. Right. So, obviously, I believe in, like, I think the state should do certain things, but at the same time, I think it should be a representative democracy, or proportional representative democracy, of course. Obviously, that's the best thing. And obviously, then the state should also fund permanent revolutions.
Right. Okay. So, in terms of Trotsky's thought, do you believe in, like, vanguardism, or?
So, as far as I know what Trotsky thought, right? Trotskyites can either agree with vanguardism, or you could not. I don't think it is inherent to the ideology to agree with vanguardism. I could be wrong. People could tell me that, that's not right at all, like, you're wrong. Like, shit like that, but, you can believe in it. Like, Lenin supported it. Trotsky was a simp for Lenin. Like, he was just a fucking big simp for Lenin.
Yeah, but wasn't Trotsky, like, in charge of the Mensheviks, who were, like, the reformist people?
No. He was not in charge of the Mensheviks. Oh man, I just knew who that was yesterday. The leader of the Mensheviks.
I can Google it. Hold up. I will not.
Too late.
Any rock. Okay. What do you mean too late? You already did it, or?
Yeah.
Okay. It was.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I think it was Julius Martov. Or maybe not. Cool. I don't know. It doesn't really tell me who was the leader of the Mensheviks.
No, Trotsky started out as a Menshevik. Okay.
He started as a Menshevik, but then he became a Bolshevik.
Right. Okay. So, in terms of
during the, I think, first revolution.
Yeah. So why do you believe this instead of, like, anarchism? Do you have, like, any, like, problems with, like, anarchism or anarcho?
Anarchism, I don't think it works.
Why do you not think that? Okay,
so it doesn't work in the fact that anarchism doesn't work because of it doesn't work within the capitalist bounds of the day, right? So if you try to go straight from capitalism to syndicalism, or shit like that, capitalism to anarchism, you're not gonna get that. Like, it's been proven that, like, it was proven that, like, the Kronstadt rebellion in the Soviet Union was crushed by Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin. The Paris Commune was crushed by by the French bureaucracy and, Prussia and communist Spain. I think it was anarchist Portugal. Not Portugal. Aragon.
Catalonia.
Yeah, Catalonia was destroyed by, well, bureaucracy mainly. That's one of the main issues. But it was destroyed by them and the fascist Franco and shit, like. And then Rojava's in the middle of being destroyed. Like.
Oh. I was about to bring up Rojava, but I'm like, Rojava's been going on for 7 years.
Like, Rojava's in the middle of being destroyed. Like, each time they do it, it lasts longer, but it's still going to be destroyed. Like, obviously, that's showing that, like, the further on we get into time, like, anarchism works a bit better because of the systems that we have in place, but at the same time, it can be crushed.
Yeah.
Too.
But like I don't know, this your philosophy like believes in you believe in like syndicalism, like but like through Trotskyism, right? Like transition or no? Did I get that wrong?
Syndicalism in the way that the economy and it would be a syndicalist economy, syndicalism as part of the political system, and then the political system mainly would be a proportional representative democracy, as well as with certain things that would be, I don't know if you could consider that syndicalist, but with like a syndicalist representative area for the workers as well as for all the people, and then it have 3 layers to it. Let's put it that way, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
But
yeah. So in terms of anarchism, if like you said that like stuff like the like anarchist Catalonia and Rojava are both like Rojava is being destroyed, and the CNT FAI didn't last too long. But the common thing that you keep bringing up is that these societies were brought up in a time of like constant of like constant struggle, right? Like with CNT FAI, they had like fascists on one side, and then they had like Marxist Leninists on the other side. I don't know which came first, actually. They had communists on one side, fascists on the other side, fighting them at the same time. Rojava is in Syria, which is like the Middle East is in a constant state of war. Do you think that if like an anarchist society was allowed to just like be built in like a peaceful place, do you think it would be able to last? Or
well, if it was built within a peaceful society, right, within a peaceful area, then it could last. I don't doubt that it could. However, the fact that all socialist societies, minus I think China, and I think minus China, Nepal were brought up in the middle of war. When a country is born in war, they get either fucked over or they become more bureaucratic, right? So let's take the Soviet Union, for example. It was not supposed to stay a state where there was only a state where it was all Vanguard Party. It was just the Vanguard. Like, it was supposed to go towards a republic and then slowly degenerate like towards anarchism. However, when you're born into such like war, like oh shit,
your mic's like
yep.
Yeah, so you were saying.
So, like, when it's born into constant, when your nation is born into constant war, it creates the ability that you have to be more unified, centralized. And centralization is the opposite of going towards anarchism, because you have to decentralize and federalize and all that shit. So it's an interesting dichotomy here, because the anarchists want to not really be centralized whenever they're born, but a nation born in the modern day is going to be born into total war. Right. So.
Yeah. I don't know. I've heard a lot about this, like from people who like believe in anarchism. I don't personally know how I feel about this. A lot of them say stuff about how in order for anarchism to truly work, there needs to be like what Trotsky says to be a permanent revolution. If it was just like a highly like networked but like decentralized like movement of anarchists, like uprisings around the world, I honestly think that it could work. You know, like I don't think that like we have needs for like 5-year plans and vanguard parties in order for a socialist country to work.
Yeah, you don't need the Vanguard Party or like 5-year plans or anything for that to work.
Yeah.
You can have a free market, not free market, but market socialist, right? You can have a market in socialism. I think everyone at this point knows that. So you don't have to have a completely 100% planned economy, and with that as well,
Right.
you don't really need to. What's the word I'm trying to think of? What? You don't need the Vanguard Party either. I
Yeah.
know the Vanguard Party is supposed to represent everyone's views and beliefs about how the world works and or whatever, but it's not.
You cut out for a sec.
Oh, did I? I
Yeah.
I stopped at it's not, if that's what you meant.
Okay. You said it's not okay. I was confused. I was like, oh, is there?
I lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't need the Vanguard Party. The people know what's
Right.
best for the people. The bureaucracy knows what's best for the bureaucracy. Right? And that's how we get corporatism. That's how we get the modern day bullshit with neoliberalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. That was a weird noise, but frick. I also lost my train of thought. Frick.
This happens sometimes.
Yeah. No. I don't know. It doesn't happen with Vosh, but shoot. Should we say something about I don't know. Do you think like in terms of so like you said that you're like a Trotskyist, right? So,
Yes.
I'm currently like writing like videos on what like anarchists can learn from from like different philosophers, like political theorists, right? So it's like the first episode is good, like what anarchists can learn from like Vladimir Lenin, and you know, it's like it's not going to be all non-anarchists, but you know, it's like it's supposed to be like seeing what we can learn from like different political theorists. What are your opinions on like, do you think that you told me that you're not a fan of Kropotkin, but do you think that Trotskyists or like Marxist-Leninists can learn stuff from like anarchist philosophy?
Obviously.
Right.
I the idea of the permanent revolution from Trotsky, right, came from anarchist philosophy about about anarchism knows no borders, because obviously you can't have anarchism if you have borders, right? Because anarchism doesn't allow for borders. So that's just one of those things that's like that's obviously something we should take advantage of. We should try that. I do believe there are efforts in which we can use anarchism to our advantage. We can use it to figure out what we'll do after we abolish the state, and we try to move our transitionary state more towards anarchism. We can learn what we want from that, you know, like whether it's fucking mutualism, Anson, fucking council communism, you know, any of that.
Right. I have another like argument against Trotskyism and like communism in general. As we've seen throughout history, right? We've seen that you know that society. There's countries like the USSR and China became communist, right? And they but then they eventually like moved. They either liberalized or they moved to like capitalism. How if we got to your like your Trotskyist like society, how would we like make sure that the society maintains on track towards like a more like libertarian socialist ideal other than like rather than like a more liberal or a more capitalist economy or just like in general?
So I think you could do that just by having the democratic like shit, right? Like you could just do the what am I thinking? Like if you have a democracy, a proportional representative democracy, the people are obviously going to choose things that are going to affect them more, as well as if because in essence, every time I talk to a libertarian about fucking market socialism, they just tell me you want capitalism with co-ops.
Right.
And so, in essence, besides the fact that we don't want people exploiting others and using other people's wealth, you could make a case for that it is just capitalism with co-ops, right?
Yeah.
So, people are gonna move. The people will move towards stuff they naturally know about. But if capitalism with co-ops or market socialism, it seems like the best idea, they're gonna move towards that. So,
Right.
and then obviously, with the idea of a representative democracy, if you have parties, obviously, those parties are going to advocate for their own specific interest as well. So if you have like a Marxist-Leninist party, they're going to advocate for a stronger state, but as well as like half of leftists, I would assume half of the far left are anarchist, at least half. So
Yeah.
I would say that that would also be a deciding factor too, because you would need the state, but at the same time, you could use the state to dissolve the state.
Right.
Bureaucracy and all that bullshit, but you could try to dissolve the state. We can get as close to a stateless society as possible before we would, hopefully not, but before we would have to do a revolution for it.
Okay. In terms of many social during the USSR, Vladimir Lenin, a lot of like anarchists I've talked to said that like their opinion on Lenin is that he was that he had good intentions and but he's tainted. So he eventually he got extremely like paranoid of like counter revolutionaries, which led to him like basically executing anyone who wasn't like who wasn't for a communist state. Even though the anarchists were their allies. Like, what would you do in this society? Like, what would the state do to avoid, like, I don't know if you just talked about that or not, but what would they do to avoid, like, a paranoid, like worry about, like, counter-revolutionaries and, like, crackdowns on like, different thought that we've seen in states like the USSR?
Okay, so what would they do about it? Just to preface, before I say what they would do about it, right? I want to preface this by saying I think it's a natural human right for everyone to have freedom of thought and freedom of expression of their thought, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the people outside protesting COVID right now, they have the ability to do that. They shouldn't, but shouldn't have the ability, but they shouldn't be doing it. But they have the ability to be doing it.
Yeah.
Good on them, I guess. But I wouldn't want anyone's freedom to be taken away. I do think that there are ways that it could be in a representative democracy, and obviously if we give all the power to one person who surrounds themselves with a party that is their party, basically, built behind them, because Lenin ran the Bolshevik party, right?
Yeah.
So having someone who ran the party and then realized, oh, hey, these people may not advocate for exactly what I want. Because the anarchists and the social revolutionaries and the social democrats, they wanted different things from the state than the Bolsheviks, than the Leninist, than the statist at the time. They were not Marxist-Leninist, but and the anarchists wanted to go straight to a stateless society back in that time, because the thought of anarchism, I don't think, was completely cemented yet.
I have to like check if like the Paris Commune happened before the Russian Revolution.
It did. The Paris Commune happened in 1947, 1957. In the 1950s, there you go. I'm just gonna say 1950. I think it's like 1948 from June to something. But it was definitely, or 1848. 19.
We're talking about the Paris Commune.
The Paris Commune, 1800s, 1850s.
Oh, okay. You said 1950s for like a little. At least I.
Yes, I realized. I had noticed.
Very confused. I'm like, what? What?
I had noticed that I was saying that, and I was kind of confused on.
Yeah. Okay, this makes sense. Right. Okay.
But
as you were saying.
Fuck. I lost my train of thought.
Oof. I'm sorry. Shoot. So yeah, you were saying okay. Oof. So you said you were very much for free speech, but many you say how would you deal like in this society? How would they deal with like people who were not like happy with this with like that with like the state in that society?
They could try to revolt, but obviously it's going to have military and bureaucracy. The best way they could change what they wanted through would be through the state and through the bureaucracy of the state, right?
Yeah.
So,
So the state wouldn't censor like this. Wouldn't censor like if they were gonna have like little like meetings about the glories of capitalism or whatever. Like the state would not like stop them, right?
no, you would not be stopped,
Okay.
because obviously stopping like some ideology, right? Like
Yeah.
if we stop people from talking shit about fascism, right? If we stop people from talking about it, period, it's going to pique people's interest in it. So if we stop
Yeah.
people from talking about capitalism, it's just going to like pique their interest in capitalism, like.
Right.
So obviously you're not going to stop them, but as people see the best interest of it, they're not going to be like, oh, well, that makes sense. I obviously want that, where people can exploit me and, you know, my fucking electricity and water that is completely free and I work and I'm perfectly fine will get taken away from me. Like, that's dumb. Or at least I think it's dumb.
Yeah, I see like more often like people are becoming like, especially in times of COVID, we're seeing people like more like upset with like how shitty capitalism is and how like if we had free healthcare and we did other stuff that other countries were doing, we the United States at least would be like we would be in a much better position than we were than we are now. And I realize that like if we still lived in like the age of 2019, we're like we didn't like live in a status where we didn't have like a status quo and everything was like there was stuff was unfine, but a lot of like most people can just kind of like for like not think about it, right? And then you like take the status quo and you spin it out of like control, right? Then people are much more like interested in like changing things.
Yeah, when the status quo fails, people are usually
Right.
people usually I'm trying to think. When the status quo fails, people are usually looking for something different to go towards, right? So,
Yeah.
like in the 1930s, there was a big socialist uprising, which is why we got the New Deal in the 1940s, right? And so on. Or, well, 30s and early 40s. Late 30s, early 40s. Was because if it was FDR, right? If FDR didn't do that.
The New Deal was the fucking Great Depression. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, I think it was FDR. I can look this up. Hold on.
Okay. Well, the New Deal, that was fucking a big deal because America was about to go into a fucking revolution. You can't do that. You can't just let your country fall apart because you gotta stick to the status quo. Like, modern day neoliberals don't understand that sometimes you have to do things for the best interest of the people. Like, obviously, Biden is implementing a public option, but my opinion on a public option is interesting, to say the least.
And will be coming to a YouTube channel near you.
Okay.
Right? That's like I don't know. Right?
Well, I don't like public options. I go over this eventually in another video, but
that's why I was making a joke about like how I was editing it. Whatever. Yeah. No. Okay.
But anything else you'd like to ask?
Do you think this where do you think this would do you think this would work in a small scale, or do you think like it could like if it just if like a revolution happened in this your like Trotskyist like this idea of a society took over would it like should it be smaller, or would it be ideally just be big, like taking over like a bigger country?
So my beliefs is that you have to have a first world nation or a developed nation in order to do this. So you can't do this without like debating without the main nation like America, Great Britain, Russia or China doing it, right? Or
Yeah.
India, because India is a upcoming major world power. Um, you would need these people in order to do what we are doing. You need to export. If we would need to export the revolution.
Yeah.
So that would be an interesting thing to think about. Right.
Okay. Okay. Ooh, there's a new. Okay. In terms of I don't know, like, blah. I lost my train of thought. There is something I literally had in my mind. I completely just.
So, the permanent revolution, right?
Yeah.
The permanent revolution, I don't know if you're an anarchist. You have an anarchist thing as your background, so I'd assume you're an anarchist.
Very much an ANCOM.
But
Yeah, very much an ANCOM.
But
I've studied Trotsky. Yeah.
we can agree that a revolution that because you can't have socialism, you can't have revolutions with borders, you can't have true communism, true anarchism with borders. That's important. You can't have those borders, but you would have to find a way to go around them, of course. And with Trotskyism, I actively think you should not be interventionist, but you should support the international community of the proletariat, right? You should give them economic support if needed, because that's what they need. Cuba does that. Cuba doesn't really do the economic support, but they do export the revolution.
Right. So it's like what the USSR did with North Vietnam, right, during the Vietnam War, or like China, right?
Kinda, but the way that the USSR did it, it wasn't for the best interest of the people. It was for the best interest of the USSR. The more buffer states they have, the better it'll be for them, right?
Oh, okay.
The more control they have over the surrounding area, the better it is for the people in the USSR, not particularly for the people in the other countries. So you have this dichotomy of, well, I want to help people because people need the best for themselves, or we need the best for our nation, right? And so you can find the difference there between Marxist-Leninism, where that splits off from actual Marxist thought, I would say, which would be that, do we keep socialism in one nation, or do we expand socialism to other parts of the world?
Yeah. But the idea of permanent revolution, I don't know where I stand on it in terms of anarchism, right? Because I believe anarchism should have no borders. But I recently saw this alternate history video where Stalin did not take power, and Trotsky and Trotsky did take power, and he applied his idea of permanent revolution to the USSR, and what the idea of permanent revolution that would start another world war, right? In terms of
depending on how you would do the permanent revolution, you would have to do it as the boiling frog paradox, right? So if you put a frog in boiling water, the frog's gonna jump out of the water. If you put a frog in lukewarm water or room temperature water, and then you slowly increase the thing to a boil, the frog is gonna boil to death, right? Because it can't tell the difference. That's the difference. Depending on how you implement Trotskyism, you want the slow boil. You want the slow heat to turn up. You don't want to go straight into it. That's what the Nazis did as well. They did the slow heat. They did the Anschluss. They remilitarized the fucking shit like that. They didn't immediately go into all-out total war blitzkrieg. They slowly did it over time. Which is
this also applies to what we were talking about earlier about supporting other nations, right? An idea a Trotskyist society would be they wouldn't start they wouldn't immediately go into a war with different nations. They would support either rebellions or like movements in those
Yes.
countries?
So
Okay.
so the thing would be you would just support you would support other revolutionaries. You would support
Right.
your allies, the people who want support.
Okay.
And
Do you
obviously,
think?
Hmm?
Sorry. Go ahead. No. What,
I was gonna say, and obviously you would pick these people based off of like your beliefs and their beliefs, right? Because you're not always gonna get a Trotskyist party of somewhere to start a revolution. It might be the I don't know, fucking De Leonist, anarchist, mutualist, you know, shit like that, right? So you'd have to agree with someone and try to. They might start the revolution, so you have to figure out who do I support, who do I not. You don't support the Strasserites, but maybe you support the social
Sorry,
revolutionaries.
Yeah, the Strasserites. They're they were like the Nazguls, right? They were like
They were the Nazis, but they were the socialist Nazis.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So-
I know that. Okay. You said Strasserites, and I was very confused. I didn't know if you meant Strasserists or something different. Right.
That's what I meant, Strasserist.
Yeah. So, what are your what are your opinions on the USSR? Because you said some stuff like that would support Trotskyism, but you've also like I don't know. You've also said like
All
at
right.
least expressed a little bit of like I don't know, like negativity towards the USSR.
So-
What's your opinion on it?
My opinion on the USSR is that it was good for socialism overall,
Yeah.
right? But it was also bad for socialism in general. So it
Yeah.
was good in the fact that it, you know, showed that you could have socialism on a large scale. But on the other hand, it showed that your state can degenerate, right? So we had
Right.
a degenerated or a failed worker state in which, in theory, in practice, what it was that the vanguard and the state will own the means of production, and since the people want the vanguard party, in theory it's socialism because the people own the means of production through the vanguard party and through the state. In practice, it was the people were completely disconnected from the bureaucracy and the vanguard party, and you ended up with state capitalism, right? Where the state owned all the means of production and the people didn't own the means of production.
Okay.
It wasn't pure capitalism because there weren't interest groups that owned it, but it was state capitalism.
Yeah.
So that
Okay.
was fun.
Oh, so it's over? Okay. Yeah. We're talking like the USSR. We're talking about like the overall stream.
Well, that was in the USSR.
Okay. Because you said that was fun. I was very confused if you meant by like the stream or if like you meant like the USSR was like the conversation about the USSR.
Oh, the conversation about the USSR. I kind of like went off on a tangent and then ended the tangent with that was fun. But no, yeah, like that's my opinion on the USSR and their economic system. I kind of support Lenin. I think a lot of Lenin's policies were kind of okay. He did some stupid shit. I know for a fact that Lenin, whenever he... So, this has nothing to do with it, but I just want to share a silly fucking story about Lenin, right? So,
All right.
Lenin banned smoking on trains to the bathrooms whenever he became because he would ride the trains, right?
Yeah.
He banned the smoking on trains to the bathroom. His train rides were smoke-free.
Right.
Goes
The ones
in-
that he rode on, or just like in general?
No, in general, just all trains. And he rode on trains, and because he hated the smoke, he hated how smoky the trains were. So he went to the restroom and fucking like it was just clouded up. So he had to repeal the law. That way, the entire train was equal, and not the bathroom was just a cloud of smoke. But no, I do disagree with the Vanguard Party. I don't disagree with the idea that the Mensheviks and the Socdems weren't the best for the second international was definitely bad for the socialist movement as a whole.
Yeah.
Because they thought you could reform capitalism into socialism and we'll be fine, right? And I really don't think you can reform capitalism into socialism.
Right.
Because the capitalists are going to want to keep capitalism.
Right. So you're saying you don't think that socialist states and capitalist states can like coexist?
I really don't. So I'm gonna be very what's it called? I'm gonna get on to you about language and how language works for a moment.
Right.
But I don't think that
Sorry, before you start, I gotta like write this other down idea that I have.
Semantics. There we go. Get on to you about semantics for a second. So when you say socialist state, right? I think socialist states can exist with capitalist states.
Yeah.
Can exist with capitalism. Socialism and like communism itself, anarchism, communism can't. Which is my whole debate about why I don't like anarchism. I just don't.
Right.
I don't think it's necessary in the modern day. The thing is that with a bureaucracy and all that shit, you have a way to make sure you're protecting the people.
Yeah.
But without that, without all of that, you are building yourself up for failure.
Okay.
So, like I said, they're easily dismantled because the moment they come into existence, right after they come into existence is the best time to destroy them.
Right. Okay, so it's like extinguishing a fire before it like gets too big, right?
Exactly.
And from the capitalist point of view.
From a capitalist point of view, you extinguish the fire before it gets too big. That way you don't have to worry about it in the future.
Right.
And you can't do that if the state is the USA or the Soviet Union or an island like Great Britain, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to, like, extinguish a small flame if it was a state. But if, say, like, the US just had a random anarchist, like, commune break away from it and declare that this is what it's going to do, then obviously, like, it's going to be crushed immediately.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Sorry if I'm like jumping around too much. I found this this idea very like fascinating. But in terms of Trotskyism, right? So, you said that you're not a fan of the Vanguard Party, but in terms of like philosophy, but in terms of like Leninism, the need for the you said you don't need it. Like, can you like what's the word? You can. So like the Vanguard Party is the supposed to like lead the people, you're supposed to be the face of the people, supposed to centralize people, and supposed to like be like a hierarchy to like protect them, right? But you said that you don't want the like syndicalism is maybe I misunderstand syndicalism, but isn't syndicalism more like decentralized, or is it like how
syndicalism is union based, right? So everything is the unions mainly. So the unions are part of the government. The government is controlled by unions. I'm not a complete syndicalist, I guess, because I don't believe that the entire government should be unionized. I do think it should. I believe in a government that has a house for. So the government is all a group government, right? So you have like basically it'd be like the modern day U.S. Congress or like a parliament, right?
Yeah.
So you would have upper house, lower house, and then like a house of syndicates. And the upper house would be the proportional representatives of all the people who vote in elections. The second house would be people randomly chosen off the street because those people would know more about what they want than the people. Those people are the literal people. And then And then the third one would be like the representatives of the syndicates chosen by the workers who work within the syndicates. Right? So all of that would equal something that would be fairly representative of the people. Obviously, you can't have a true democracy if it's representative, but it's the closest we can get without getting rid of the state.
Yeah. This was also my first question. Without a vanguard party or a group of people or a party leading the proletariat true revolution, how would how would your I'm not sure what your philosophy is called, but how would it play out in a revolution without a party that can
without a vanguard party, I would expect there to be a major leftist revolution or revolt, and then the majority of other leftists would also revolt with it. Obviously, the moment there's a revolt and the moment the revolt turns into a revolution, you're going to have backfire from some leftists who don't agree with the revolution, fascist, and, the democratic bourgeois. But the main thing is that you don't need the main party, you just need to know who's on your side, right? So even if the MLs are fighting with the anarchists, it's the same. Like the Vanguard Party, had anarchists and Mensheviks on their side. They had social revolutionaries. Now, not all Mensheviks and social revolutionaries were on their side. Most of the anarchists were, but it was mainly a fight between the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks, not all of them versus the Mensheviks or all of them versus the state. It was the Bolsheviks versus the state, and the Mensheviks and the anarchists versus the state and Mensheviks. But the way you would think of it is that when the people rise up, and then after the revolution, either hopefully there would be a decision to make it democratic, or we'll end up for the fifth time a single party state ruled by the MLs, which I don't feel like would happen, since the majority of leftists are, or at least in the US, are social democrats or democratic socialists and anarchists.
Yeah.
So
it's weird because I feel like democratic socialists and communists in general, they're the majority of the far left rather than anarchists. I feel like the anarchists are the minority here. But I don't know. Do you see things differently?
I in the United States specifically, I see the democratic socialist and the anarchist kind of have the loudest voices out of all of them, right? And Trotskyists sort of hide in the middle of all that, and the MLs are basically doing the thing MLs do, which is always planning and plotting, while the social democrats are trying to figure out a way we can do this without having to actually have without actually having a revolution, because you don't want that. They want to cause as least amount of death as possible, so they will not do revolution if they can avoid it.
Do you consider democratic socialists and social democrats the far left? I don't.
No.
I'm not sure what a social democrat is.
Okay, so social democrats are capitalists. Let's be 100% real. The social democrats are 100% capitalist, 100% of the time.
Okay. Are they? Do they differ from liberals or? Hello?
Are they different from liberals? I would say yes, they are different from liberals. I would say that the social democrats are further left than liberals, traditional liberals. I would say if you want a traditional liberal take, I would look at I'm trying to think of his name. His name is Adam Smith. Fucking I hate landlords. there will be no such thing as landlords under capitalism, etc. That would be a traditional, in my opinion, a traditional liberal. Modern day neoliberals don't they don't agree with that. Obviously, the modern day neoliberals are just corporatist with a new logo slapped on that says, "I'm a neoliberal, love me."
Right.
But words. The Social Democrats are to the left. They're more anti-state.
Right.
They want less state intervention, but more state intervention in certain things, right? The Democratic Socialist. So here, let me describe this better. The Social Democrats want a welfare state. They want Sweden, Finland, Germany, Denmark.
Yeah.
They want that. The Democratic Socialists want a market socialist. I'm thinking they want market socialism, where the state does the majority of the caretaking for the people, but everything is technically socialism. Right. So that's what they want.
Okay.
To explain it in simpler terms.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's like, for me personally, I felt like the Democratic Socialists were more like they weren't really far left. They were more like they were more far left than your traditional liberal. But I don't know.
Yeah, they're more far left than a liberal, but they're pretty center. They're pretty center left. They're center left. And then Soc Dems are center right. If we are to split it down, like, left means socialism, right means capitalism, they'd be center right. But yeah. And then the anarchists, of course, are far left and shit like that. But I don't think I can think right now. Give me just a moment. I'll be right back. I have to go use the restroom. Intermission. Woot.
I'm gonna get coffee. Actually, hold up. I'm gonna get more coffee. I'll be right back.
So, while we are waiting on Goose, if there's any of the concurrent viewers here. Do you really have to scream? Oh. Well, I was going to ask the viewers while you were gone because I was wondering how long it was going to take you to come back if they wanted to ask any questions of their own, but, you know. Yeah. Yeah. But, there we go. Oh, well, either way, you know. Anyways, where were we? Before I think I can actually debate now and not, like, you know. I've been just, like, thinking about that, so I think that might have been what. Yeah. So. Oh. Wait. Hold on. Oh, you were muted. You're back.
Oh, I'm muted? Okay.
Oh, I was muted. I had you muted. Okay, so Goose is back. For anyone who didn't know. But let's see. What were we talking about? What do we want? Where were we?
Well, then we had a conversation about democratic socialists and like social democrats. But you know, I don't want to be like the what's his name? The guy who has like the neo-Nazis on his show. He's like one of the Young Turks people. He had like the neo-Nazis on his show, and he's just like, oh, really? This is really. He just like doesn't debunk anything they say. I don't want to be like just like interviewing. Okay, so you know, in at least in the history of I'm gonna be taking more of like a tanky stance now, playing devil's advocate and shit. But in terms of revolution, I don't actually believe any of this. I just gotta like I need to debate this.
All right.
What?
I said all right.
All right. So throughout the like many of the many communist countries like such as the USSR, China and Cuba, they were all led by Marxist-Leninists, or they were like supported by Marxist-Leninists. It seems necessary for a party to defend for a certain group of people to lead this revolution. You know.
I mean, obviously, it shows that yes, when there is a group that is built to lead, then obviously they will lead and they will be the leaders, right? But
right.
It doesn't necessarily mean they are pro-people. Yes, right. Mao was, from what I've heard, pretty cool when he was younger, but he started implementing capitalism as he got older, and then China past 1970s is not the same China as it was in the 1940s, right. You know, or even the 1950s.
Wasn't the the introduction of capitalism created by Deng Xiaoping's
yes, plan? So him, but Mao allowed for it. Right. Mao set the stages to implement capitalism.
Right.
However, he didn't do it, but he set the stage for it to happen. But whoever the fuck's name you just said, because I know
Deng Xiaoping.
Yes, him. Yes, he did do that. I can never remember his fucking name, but I know his name when people say it.
Right. Okay. And now I'm going to be jumping around, but in terms of anarchism, right? You know, as we like for. You said your idea, like for the Trotskyists, like syndicates of Trotsky or whatever, to be like the main idea, like the main idea of like communism, socialism, is to have like a borderless, like stateless society.
Yes, eventually.
Yeah, eventually. But you know, as we've seen throughout history, if like you know, like when people are put in power, you know, and like you even talked about like a Congress like type union, they're gonna be people at the top. Those people might not. What would happen if those people don't want to like surrender their power? You know.
Well, because we obviously just people surrender their power now underneath capitalism and the democratic process as well when they're voted in, right? So what makes it different from that, right? So, like,
Well,
you can
people-
be
the people
sued,
surrender the-
and like the thing is with Trotskyism, it's not only about the permanent revolution of the world, right? Not only about the
Right.
permanent revolution. It's about permanent revolution within the minds of the people as well. So if you don't get
Right.
your ideas, if you don't get what you want specifically from your government, revolt. Protest, revolt, do what you need to do. If your representative is not representing you and your representative will not back down from the government, you have the ability to revolt. You should be able to. It's a natural human thought, to protest and revolt and talk about the shit that isn't perfect.
Right. But in terms of of revolting, again, we've seen like throughout history that like people revolt. The revolt's going to be like usually like the opposite of not an opposite, but at least like much different than than like the previous government, right? So in terms of like the USS, the Bolsheviks, their plan for a new Russia would have been less of a. It was going to be nothing like the monarchist state the monarchist capitalist state that they previously had, right? So if people are allowed to just revolt, then they're going to be like, then what if like that's when like capitalist revolutionaries can revolt?
Well, let's look at France. France constantly, like they have the idea of permanent revolution built into the French people, right? So the Yellow Vest movement, the fucking 15 French revolutions, were on what, the 5th French Republic, and the French Republic got established in like 17 something, and we're on the 5th one. That should tell you something about France, right? And it's still a democratic state. It's still a democratic state, and it's still very controlled by the bourgeois and the capitalists. So I would say that as you can have a revolution that changes the complete economic and political system, you can also have a revolution that does not change the complete economic system, but only causes change to the political system in which it is corrupted.
Right. Okay. Well, in the way I see it for anarchism, like we're gonna be digressing way back to the beginning of this conversation, but in terms of like what I think is you were saying that you were saying that the it won't last, right? But I again, if you okay, but I also believe like unless we give the power, like we like make it like a stateless society from the get-go, we could never like achieve like a stateless society, because as I was saying, like it isn't just the people who like in America, people don't surrender. Like the people at the top, they don't surrender their rights to any. They don't like surrender their freedom to anything, right? They're the ones who are free, right? They're the ones who crush millions of souls daily. Unless, and again, if like give that to in your society where there are like representatives, right? There are people in power, correct?
Yes, there's going to be people who are in power.
Yeah, and people historically, when there is a situation where they can lose that power, will refuse to abandon it. Will refuse to lose their power.
Obviously.
And then now we're going back and forth. Okay, I just realized I'm going back to the. Well, then they can just revolt.
Well then they can just revolt, right? Like it's seen as a thing like you can make concessions towards something. Like capitalism can constantly make concessions towards socialist, we can have a UBI, we can have Medicare for all, we can have all this, but at the end of the day, it's still capitalism, right?
Yeah.
And once you run out of concessions to give the left, once you run out of concessions to give the socialist, what do you have next? You just have socialism to go to. You don't have anything else. So, like, once you run out of concessions, and, like, in socialism, of course, like, once you run out of concessions to give anarchist in a socialist state, what's next? Anarchism. So you either have to peacefully give out and give to anarchism, or you're going to have a revolt. And once more people have realized that they get more freedom under anarchism while still having their ability to, be themselves and like exist, but without the state and without the bureaucracy, of course people are going to choose that over the state and bureaucracy. So of course that if a revolution were to happen a second time, because you might need a revolution to get from socialism to capitalism, you could have, of course that could happen, but I'm not an advocate of a revolution from socialism to communism. But of course that could happen because the bureaucrats don't want to let go of their control.
Right.
And like my main concession between anarchist and myself is how long it takes to dissolve the state, right? Because I think you're for a you were technically for a what do we call it, transitionary state?
Me?
Right.
Like, what do you mean by transitionary? Like,
well, what's your thoughts on the transitionary state? Pro transitionary state, anti transition state,
not sure, like in the context of anarchism, I'm not sure what you mean by, like, there would be like a socialist government, and then we would go into a anarchist state, or what are you talking about?
Is that because I know like the anarcho-syndicalist, of course, they want to go from a socialist state, they want to go from the capitalist state to a short-term socialist like thing where we set up syndicates and then we dissolve that state and go straight towards anarcho-syndicalism. So there's like probably a transitionary state for like 4 or 5 months, and then it goes straight towards syndicalism, right?
Yeah.
It's towards ANSYN. I was just wondering if your thoughts were, are we currently living in the transitionary period, or is there going to be a transitionary period after a revolution, right?
Right. You're asking, okay, so, I'm figuring this all out, right? I've been, like, into anarchism for, like, about, like, 6 or 7 months. The way I see it right now is that I feel like, as I was saying previously, in order for like us to have like a smooth period as possible, that we need to like have a revolution and then like immediately like go into not like like in 2020 2021 we're gonna go immediately into. I say we wait till like the time is like we prepare and we normalize these ideas, and then once anarchists get like the majority of people on their side, or at least like sympathetic to them, right? That and like you gotta wait for like a big like transitionary period in terms of like the status quo put into spin, right? Then you get into a revolution, and then you like set up like a anarcho-communist society.
I mean, I see where you're coming from. However, I don't think you can do that straight through a revolution. It would have to be an immediate worldwide revolution. You would have to dissolve all states at the exact same time and move straight into anarcho-communism that way. I don't see that happening, right? So like you can't just, because as I've stated before, my thoughts on the matter of anarchism is that the first little bit of an anarchist like federation or confederation or groups of anarchism, of an anarchist society, let's put it that way, of an anarchist society, it would immediately get crushed by the bourgeois. Like,
right.
There's no doubt about it.
Well, yeah.
And I think we keep going back to the same little bit, like, because we're agreeing, we're slightly disagreeing, but we're mainly agreeing on all of the main points.
Yeah.
I think the main disagreement we can have here is over whether or not we need a transitionary period or not.
Right.
And that is the main thing, because obviously we do, and we need the transitionary period to last for as long as capitalism survives. We need the entire world to be underneath of a socialist system before we get to capitalism. Or complete communism. And then you can slowly start to dissolve the state. Because you can't start dissolving the state until capitalism is gone. Because I don't think you can. There's not going to be a way to do that.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts on the matter.
Oh, okay. it makes sense. And again, I'm like these the ideas I'm like putting out now. Like I'm sure like a year or like even like a few months from now, I could probably like change. It's like I'm still like I'm reading more theory as I like go along. You know.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
If you read theory on unions, they'll get you excited for syndicates. They'll get you wanting syndicates.
Yeah.
But I just I think that syndicates are the way to run a government, the majority, and syndicates are the way you would run an economy.
Right. I guess like my main like my main like gripe with the idea of syndicalism is like I again this has to do with me reading more theory, and I'll definitely look into like whatever like you just like whatever like theory you just told me to read. I'm gonna need you to like remind me because I just completely forgot about it.
Afterwards, I'll send you some theory on trade unions.
Okay, I'm not sure how we take like the capitalist idea of like unions and stuff, and then we make that into into like an actual government. Because
Okay.
wouldn't like unions need like an economy or like a capitalist system for it to like function? Right?
So unions specifically, the modern day unions have inherently failed. They have failed multiple times, and they will continue to fail all across the world, mainly because of capitalism.
Right.
Unions are made to advocate for the workers. Capitalism is made to advocate for the rich.
Right.
That's the obvious distinction here. Unions are the thing that's supposed to make people's lives
Sure.
better.
Yeah, no, I just spilled some coffee. Hold up.
Ah.
All right. You're saying.
But yeah, unions are supposed to make people's lives better. So,
Right.
like, unions are originally made people organize. They had strikes whenever you could have general strikes. Now today it's like no general strike. You have to ask the government for this to do a strike. You must do this. You must do that. The people aren't even democratically appointed in unions. Let's be clear. Unions don't even democratically appoint people anymore. It's all fucking like you're chosen and you're chosen and you're chosen. And they get their fucking money from the corporations, right? So the unions are in the pockets of the corporations and the bureaucratic class, while also, they got to make sure that they don't fall apart because they technically are for the people. But a lot of unions kind of go for themselves and are like, why would you not want to be a part of a union that I am in, right? We give you health care. We pay you more than minimum wage. We won you that stuff. Be happy that you have that stuff.
Right.
Just be happy. Don't complain about it. Just be happy that you have it. And that's one of the bullshit things that modern day unions have. Now, how would we run a system off unions? Simple. Unions from the bottom up. Basically you could have, I think that unions would work specifically in certain areas like the sewage industry, water industry, factory farming, all that shit. Fight for better rights of the people, right? All that shit would be owned by the state, in my opinion. There would still be privately owned co-op farms or your own little personal farm, of course, but shit like that, healthcare, etc. And everyone would be under a union, so you would democratically elect your leadership for the union, for the syndicate, and then the syndicate would go towards the union of syndicates and part of the parliament, etc., etc. Yeah.
Okay.
Oof. Throat is dying trying to figure out words sometimes. Oof, oof, oof. But yeah, and then those would represent the unions and the workers in the unions in parliament, as well as they could democratically elect their higher ups, right? So you, like me and you, for example, if we worked at I don't know, at a supermarket, me and you would know better for who should be a manager than your fucking district manager, right?
Right.
We would know who would be better than the store manager than a district manager. So we should have the power to choose who our store manager is going to be.
Right. So it's like a like a pirate ship, right? I don't know if you know too much about like pirates or whatever, that the age of piracy or whatever, but like in terms of for those who do not know, watching, like
Or will
pirate
be
ships
watching.
would have, or will be watching, pirate ships, like they would elect a captain, and they could just like they could like get rid of the captain if needed, right? And the captain would usually be like the person who was like most respected and like most and like knew what they were doing, you know?
So
Are you talking like that?
yeah, basically.
Okay. So you heard it here. Pirate ships were based in Redfield.
Piratism is basically communism. Pirates
Basically.
were basically communist.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Most people, like most liberals, find that the socialists and communists are scary words. So I think we should just like rename ourselves pirates. We should call ourselves the Pirate Party.
That already exists.
Well, yeah, but like, you're not in America.
Yeah, there is. There's a Pirate Party USA.
Hold up, I gotta look this up. I'm gonna go down this rabbit hole. This is gonna be a strange rabbit hole.
Oh god, this is gonna turn from fucking debating about fucking revolution to debating about fucking piratism. Oh my god. But
the Pirate Party is the local adopted political parties in different countries. Pirate Party supports civil rights, so direct democracy. This is okay. This is just socialism with extra steps.
it is socialism with extra steps. It's pretty based. It's pretty socialist, right? So
Yeah.
like
Your logo looks like a plastic bag being like flown in the wind, but it's cool. This is cool.
true. But yeah, that's my opinion on everything, and that's my thoughts.
Right.
Of course, you just don't like the state. Like, I find anarchism to be like a childish thing. Like, of course you need an intermediary state. You need the intermediary state. Like, you can't not live without it. You need syndicates. You need all this shit. So, like, I don't understand why you'd want to abolish it. Because if you abolish it, you're just letting the owner class. Well, you're letting the bourgeois realize that, oh hey, we have more time to be the bourgeois.
Yeah. I have to say, when you like said that anarchism was like a childhood idea, I did it. That is like the most like well thought out term of like calling like anarchism like childish, because when people say anarchism is childish, they usually like think of just the like the mainstream idea of anarchism, and I understand what you're saying now.
Yes.
Instead of you're not saying, oh man, and how can you be in an anarchist group if anarchism means no rules? You're like okay. This makes sense.
Anarcho-communists believe in a government but don't believe in a state, and anarcho-capitalists don't believe in a government but they believe in the NAP, which is basically a government.
Yeah, and
so in reality, you're still adhering to governments. You're still adhering to authority, whether or not you like authority or not. It's just what type of hierarchy do you listen to, right?
Right. But have you read the Homage to Catalonia or?
No.
Okay. I mean, if you're probably not like interested in like, you've already just like we spent like last hour talking about how like anarchism left or what, like how you don't like anarchism, but in terms of like talking about like society or whatever, like hierarchies or whatever, if you look at like how the CNTFAI operated, it was more of like a like it was like there were hierarchies most definitely, but it was more of like it was less of like the oppressive hierarchies that we see in like capitalist states, where there's like there's like a leader, right, who just like there's a boss who just tells you like do this and I'll give you a little bit of breadcrumbs while I just take all this wealth for myself. It was more of like it was more again like camaraderie rather than like, and this I just happen to be a boss rather than like the oppressive hierarchies.
I mean, I guess that. I mean, it's kind of true, right? I just happen to lead something, right? I'm just happen to be a leader, but like, it's not.
It's like you don't listen. Like you aren't like under like order control by the government. Like you are the government. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know what you mean, but not the biggest fan.
Okay.
But I think we can end this here because we're on agreement with everything.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
yeah. Hold on. Let me just since I'm on stream anyways and I have all that recorded, I'm going to state there's going to be another video up eventually. For anyone who watches this, there's going to be a video about what is it? Public option, fucking Biden. Goose here is actually editing it, so Goose gets to listen to all my bad takes. There you go.
Not that bad, but okay.
All my takes are bad takes. If you watch my channel long enough. If you watch all 3 videos, they're all bad takes. Anyways.
I gotta check. I didn't know you had like I felt like this the video you were making was like your first video.
No, it's my 4th video.
Alright, cool. Alright, I gotta watch these now. So.
Alright. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Goose, for being the first person I debate. Of course,
No problem.
over time, my debating skills will get better, and I'll figure out how to debate people better.
Yeah. I'm glad my like first debate like thing wasn't like immediately with Fosh because I know he's just gonna fucking kill me. But
oh, he's going to destroy you.
yeah, it's gonna be great.
Anyways,
Bye.
bye. How do I end?
Right.
Beep.